voice you hear when you talk is, in a very real sense, a lie. A warm, flattering little lie your own skull has been telling you your entire life. Because the moment you hear yourself played back on a recording, a voicemail, a video someone tagged you in, there is that first horrible second where you think, that is not what I sound like. Please tell me that is not what I sound like. Here's the twist that is going to sting a little. That recording is the honest one. That is the voice every single person you have ever met actually hears. So in the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly why your recorded voice sounds so wrong to you, why it sounds completely normal to everyone else, and which one, the recording or the voice in your head, is really you. Let me start by taking apart the explanation you have almost certainly reached for. When you first hear yourself recorded in recoil, your instinct is to blame the recording. It is a cheap microphone. It is bad quality. The phone is distorting it somehow. It has to be the technology, because that thin, slightly higher, strange little voice on the playback simply cannot be the rich, normal voice you hear in your head every single day. It is a very reassuring explanation, and it is wrong. In most cases, the recording is not distorting anything at all. If anything, the recording is more accurate than what you hear when you speak. The voice you have been listening to inside your own head your whole life is the one getting a special effect added to it, for free, that nobody else on earth gets to hear. You have probably even turned to a friend at some point and asked, "Do I really sound like that?" secretly begging them to say no. And they said yes. They said yes because to them, you always have. The stranger on the recording is not a glitch. The stranger is you. So here's the plan. Because this one has two completely separate causes that stack together, and it really helps to keep them apart. First, the physical reason, the actual acoustics of why your voice sounds different to you than it does to everyone else. Second, the psychological reason, which is honestly the bigger and stranger one, why hearing your real voice feels so deeply uncomfortable even beyond the sound of it. And third, what all of this actually means, including the genuinely good news that you can fix the cringe. Let's start with the physics, because it is weirdly satisfying. The first reason your recorded voice sounds wrong is something called bone conduction. Here's what is actually happening every time you speak. The sound of your own voice reaches your ears by two completely different paths at the exact same time. The first path is the obvious one, through the air. Your voice leaves your mouth, travels through the air, and enters your ears, exactly the way everyone else hears you. But there is a second, secret path that only you get. When you talk, your vocal cords also vibrate the bones of your skull directly, and those vibrations travel through your head, straight to your inner ear from the inside. And here's the key part. Bone is very good at carrying low frequencies, so that internal path adds a whole extra layer of deep, rich, low tones to your voice that are not really out there in the sound at all. They are being added by your own skull just for you. The result is that the voice you hear in your head is lower, fuller, and warmer than the voice that actually comes out of your mouth and into the world. Here is the example you can literally feel right now, wherever you are. Plug both of your ears with your fingers and hum. Notice how much deeper and louder and richer your voice suddenly sounds. That is bone conduction with the air path blocked, so you are hearing almost purely the skull version. And it is a bass-heavy, cozy, radio announcer kind of sound. Now, a recording only ever captures the air path, the part that actually leaves your body. It never gets those bonus low frequencies your skull was secretly adding the whole time. So, when you hear the recording, all of that warmth is simply gone. And what is left sounds thinner and higher and unfamiliar. And your brain screams that something is wrong. I remember the first time this really landed for me. I heard an old voicemail I had left, and my honest first thought was that someone had prank called with an impression of me. A slightly worse, slightly higher me. It took an embarrassingly long time to accept that no, that is just the me that exists outside of my own head. And here is the warning, the part that is genuinely hard to swallow. That means the recording is not the fake. Your internal voice is the enhanced one. Everyone else has only ever heard the air version, the recorded one, and to them, it sounds completely, boringly normal. You are the single only person alive who has ever heard the deluxe, skull-boosted edition of your voice, which is exactly why you are the only one who thinks the recording sounds off. Quick side note, phone calls do genuinely change your voice a little, because phones cut out some of the highest and lowest frequencies to save space, but that is a small effect on top of a much bigger one. And that bigger one, the part that really matters, is only half the story, and honestly the smaller half. The second reason is psychological, and it is the one that really gets under your skin. Because here's the thing. Even when people hear a genuinely high quality, perfectly accurate recording of their voice, one where the sound is not distorted in any way, they still usually cringe. If it were purely about missing bass frequencies, a really good recording would fix it, and it just does not. So something more is going on. Researchers even have a name for it. They call it voice confrontation. And it goes back to studies from the 1960s where people consistently rated their own recorded voice as less pleasant than strangers rated it. The leading idea is that hearing your true external voice forces a small collision between the self you think you are and the self the world actually gets. Your voice is a huge part of your identity, and over the years, you have quietly built up an internal sense of exactly how you come across to people. Then the recording plays, and it does not quite match the person living in your head, and that mismatch feels genuinely uncomfortable, almost like catching an unflattering candid photo of yourself mid-blink, and it goes a little deeper than just the pitch. A recording also hands you all the things about your own speech you never notice in the moment. The little verbal tics, how often you say like, or so, your actual accent, which you cannot really hear from the inside, the way your voice does something slightly different when you are nervous. In your head, while you are speaking, you are focused on your thoughts, not on the audio. The recording strips all of that away and just hands you the raw performance, and it can feel weirdly exposing. The first time I heard myself back, forget the pitch, I was horrified by how many times I said the word like in a single sentence. I sounded nothing like the articulate person I was so sure I was in the moment. And that gap between the fluent, polished person you feel like on the inside and the slightly awkward, liking person on the tape is a big part of the sting. But here is a small mercy worth holding on to. Everyone has those tics. Every single person you admire, every smooth talker you have ever quietly envied says, and like and stumbles over words constantly. You just never notice theirs because you are listening to what they are saying, not auditing their audio. And that is the exact same grace everyone extends to you all day, every day, without you ever realizing it is happening. There is one more psychological piece stacked on top, and it is one we have actually touched on before on this channel. It is the mere exposure effect. The simple fact that your brain tends to prefer whatever is familiar to it. And what voice are you overwhelmingly the most familiar with in the entire world? The warm, skull-boosted one in your head, the one you have heard every waking day of your life. So the recorded version is not only acoustically different, it is unfamiliar, and your brain is quietly wired to find the unfamiliar version of a familiar thing slightly wrong and off-putting. You are not really hearing a bad voice, you are hearing an unfamiliar one, and your brain is stubbornly reading unfamiliar as bad. Here's the example that ties both psychological pieces together. Notice that other people almost never hate your recorded voice the way you do. Play a voicemail to a friend and they will just shrug. That sounds like you. Because to them, it does. That airpath voice is the only one they have ever known. So it is perfectly familiar and perfectly you. No collision, no mismatch, no cringe at all. The discomfort is not in the voice itself. It lives entirely in the gap between the voice you expected and the voice that actually came out. And here's the warning genuinely worth sitting with. This means the cringe is not really telling you that your voice is bad. It is only telling you that your voice is unfamiliar to you, which is a very different and much less scary thing. Which points us straight at the good news. The third thing is what all of this actually means. And it comes with a genuinely reassuring twist. Start with the big one. If the recorded voice is the one everybody else hears, and they all find it perfectly normal, then the voice you cannot stand is not some ugly secret you have been hiding. It is just you, the real, external, out loud you, and the entire world has been getting along with it perfectly fine this whole time. The voice on the recording is the voice your friends recognize the instant you call, the voice someone once fell for, the voice your family would know anywhere on earth. You are the only person in your entire life who finds it strange, and you find it strange for the least meaningful reason imaginable, plain old unfamiliarity. And that is exactly where the good news comes in, because unfamiliarity is one of the easiest problems in the world to fix. It fades with exposure. Think about the people who hear their own recorded voice constantly. Broadcasters, podcasters, actors, anyone who works with audio all day. Almost every one of them will tell you they hated it at first, and then, after enough listening, it simply stopped bothering them. Not because their voice changed at all, but because the recorded version slowly became familiar too. And once it was familiar, the mere exposure effect flipped from working against them to working for them. Here's the example, and it is one you can genuinely try yourself. If you record yourself talking for just a couple of minutes and play it back once a day for a week, by the end of that week, it barely phases you. The stranger quietly becomes just you again. I know this one firsthand because I could not stand hearing myself when I started making these. And now I listen to my own voice for hours while editing and feel almost nothing. It is pure exposure. And here is the gentle warning for anyone out there who is avoiding making videos or sending voice notes or putting themselves out into the world at all because they cannot stand their own voice. You are not fighting an ugly voice. You are fighting a lack of exposure, and every single time you hit play, you are quietly curing it. There is even a small practical version of this if you want to speed the whole thing up. Leave yourself a voice note, just talk to your phone for 30 seconds about your day, and then listen back to it. Do that a few times a week. It feels a little ridiculous and genuinely uncomfortable at first, which is exactly the point, because that discomfort is the unfamiliarity draining away in real time. People who use their voice for a living basically do this on purpose until the cringe is completely gone, and there is no reason at all you cannot borrow the same free trick for yourself. So let me pull this whole thing together, because once you can see both halves clearly, that cringe loses almost all of its power over you. You learn that your voice reaches your ears two ways at once, through the air like it does for everyone else, and through the bones of your own skull, which secretly pump in extra low frequencies and make your internal voice deeper, richer, and warmer than the one that actually leaves your mouth. So a recording, which only ever captures the air version, sounds thinner and higher and wrong to you, even though it is the honest one. You learn that the deeper reason is psychological, a genuine collision between your inner self-image and your true external voice, made worse by the fact that your brain simply prefers the familiar head voice it has heard forever, and made stranger still by all the little verbal tics the recording suddenly reveals. And you learned that other people do not share the cringe at all, because the recorded voice is the only one they have ever known, and to them, it is completely, comfortably you. And here is the part I really want you to keep, because it should genuinely change how you feel the next time you hear a recording of yourself. The voice you cannot stand is the exact voice that everyone who loves you would recognize in a single heartbeat. It is the real one. It is not thin or strange or wrong. It is simply unfamiliar to the one person who was never actually able to hear it properly in the first place, which is you. You spent your whole life as the only listener getting the special skull-enhanced edition. So the plain, honest version just sounds foreign by comparison. That is all the cringe ever was. Not ugliness, just unfamiliarity, and unfamiliarity always, always fades. And there is something almost sweet about it, once it finally sinks in. The voice you have spent your whole life quietly wincing at is, to everyone else, simply the sound of you walking into a room. It is the sound your best friend hears when you call to share good news. It is the voice that has said every kind, funny, and important thing you have ever said out loud to anyone. Nobody out there is wincing at it. They are just glad to hear it. You are the only person in the entire world who ever had a problem with your voice, and now you know that problem was never even real to begin with. So the next time you hear yourself played back and your whole body wants to recoil and hide, try to catch it and turn it around. That is not a bad voice. That is your actual voice, the one the world has always liked just fine. And the only reason it sounds off is that you are meeting it almost for the very first time. So say hello to it. Give it a few more listens than feels comfortable. It grows on you a lot faster than you would ever think. So tell me down in the comments, because misery genuinely loves company on this one. Be honest, how much do you hate hearing your own voice? And what is the single worst context you have ever been forced to hear it in? A voicemail played out loud on speaker, a video someone tagged you in without warning, your own wedding footage, and has anyone ever actually managed to convince you that your recorded voice sounds totally fine? Or do you still quietly refuse to believe a single word of it? And honestly, I still half refuse to believe it myself on a bad day, and I make videos explaining exactly why it happens. So there is genuinely zero judgment from me here. And if you want another one of these Small, freeing truths about the strange machine you happen to live inside. Go watch the one on why your brain ambushes you with cringe-worthy old memories at 3 in the morning, because it is the very same brain, doing the very same thing, quietly deciding that the unfamiliar version of you must be the wrong one. I'll see you over there.